Hello, beautiful. And what I want to know is, what is really good in your life today? I'm Kia, and this is another episode of the Female Veterans Podcast. Today, my very special guest is Tara. She worked in child abuse and neglect for 11 years after serving in the Navy. And now she's a stay-home mom who homeschools just like me and takes care of her beautiful daughter. I am so thrilled to have you with me here today, Tara. Thank you for being willing to share your story.
Oh, Kia, thank you for having me and being our voice. It's awesome.
I'm doing my best. So my first question for you is, why did you join the military?
I joined because I was a daddy's girl. My dad was a Vietnam veteran. He did 2 tours in Vietnam. So it's a direction I wanted to go. I don't think I was quite ready to head off to college yet. I wanted something different.
Right. I definitely understand that. You know, it's not surprising either. I hear that a lot, that a girl's father was in the military and so inspired her, or even her mother inspired her to go in.
Yeah.
It was my mom's dream. She didn't make it in because she got pregnant, but she wanted to always go into the Army. That was her dream.
Yeah, so, I wanted to travel. That didn't happen, but I wanted to travel.
Me too. And I did not travel either. So I feel your pain on that. What was boot camp like for you?
Boot camp, let me tell you, I was not a varsity athletic person in school. I played sports, but I was not varsity by any means. So boot camp was this challenge in my head for me to accomplish, and I loved it. It was something that I set out to kick ass in, and I did. I know Navy boot camp wasn't anything like Marine or Army or anything, but it was big for me. It was something big for me, and but I also got to go in with a buddy. We did a buddy enlistment, so she was actually in my company, so we had each other. Yeah.
That's nice. I rarely hear that you actually you go in with a buddy, but your buddy was actually with you.
Yes. Same company. Yeah. So that was helpful, but yes, all around, I enjoyed the challenge of boot camp. To me, it was a little bit of a challenge, and it's what I have the fond memories of during my time in.
Right on. That must have been really such a comfort to have, your friend with you during such a difficult time.
It was, we, because we took the bus from home to Kansas City, because we're from Missouri, to the MEP Center, and we cried all the way from home to Kansas City. And then just, that trip to boot camp, and I went to boot camp in Orlando, so we had the flight and everything, and we had each other. So that was just so comforting, having somebody that you knew there with you. And I'll never forget that first day we got to boot camp, and we're standing out there in our civilian clothes, and we're being screamed at. And she and I just looked at each other, and my first thought was, what the hell did we just do? I'm ready to go back home.
Right?
Yeah.
I definitely know that feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is my next question. Did you guys keep in touch after boot camp?
No, we really didn't. I would say within the past year, we've reconnected on Facebook, but she was stationed. My memory is so horrible. We had a month of school right after boot camp, and I cannot for the life of me remember if she was in school with me or not. I don't think she was. And then she was stationed in Florida, and I got stationed in Virginia, and we didn't. Isn't that crazy? We didn't keep in touch. We just didn't keep in touch.
Well, you served in the 90s, right? In the early part of the 90s.
Yeah.
So we didn't have cell phones.
No, as I was saying that, I was thinking we didn't have what we have today
We
to
didn't
keep
have
in touch.
Facebook. We didn't have Instagram. We didn't have any of that. Those really amazing tools
Right.
to keep track of one another and keep in touch.
Hmm. You're right.
So,
You're right. We did. I remember when I did get home and after her enlistment was up, we did meet up after then. And then, life happened. She
yeah.
was married and had kids, and I decided, or I was pushed into going into college and all of that at that point. And so life carried us our separate ways. But like I said, within probably the past year, we've reconnected on Facebook, and it's great to see her beautiful face.
Oh, that's beautiful. I always say life gets in the way of the best of intentions. Like you could just have the most wonderful intentions of being in someone's life forever and always being connected to them, but then just life happens and it carries you away sometimes.
You are totally, I mean, you're right. And it's just one of those that you have to say to yourself, I am going to make time. I'm going to make time. This is going to happen.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful thing that you guys are reconnected now, though.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it is. It's nice.
Okay, so I have another question for you, of course.
Okay.
What was your military experience like?
Well, it was good until it wasn't. That kind of thing. Like I said, I loved boot camp. I love the challenge. I'm a bit of an academic nerd, so I love that the Navy was academic in that way.
Yeah.
I excelled because I mentioned the school after boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
I was promoted to E2 because of my grades.
Wow.
And that I had such pride because when I went home, the first time I went home after boot camp and everything, I went home with stripes on my arm. And I was so proud, and I remember sewing those patches on. I was hell-bent to have those things on my shirt when I went home. So I was incredibly proud of that. It was a huge thing for me. And then I was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia. I went to boot camp in Orlando, and then I was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia. My first month there was pretty good. I reported on New Year's Eve 1994, 93.
Wow.
How do you want to say that? The night before 1994. I reported to base. It was probably the most lonely feeling I have ever had in my entire life.
Oh, no.
I was, girl, when I enlisted, I was 17. Mom and Dad signed for me. I graduated high school when I was 17. I turned 18 in August and shipped out to boot camp in September. So, like so many of my sisters, I'm sure, I was a baby. I was a baby from a very small town, is what I was. So I get there on that New Year's Eve night all by my lonesome, scared to death. I remember checking in, and they were going to assign me to a tugboat. And in my mind, I was like, no, I wouldn't mind ship, but not a tugboat. And so I quickly thought, I was like, ooh, I'm going to strike for yeoman. And so they were like, oh. So then I got put in the captain's office. And my job was mail control, coming through Naval Station Norfolk. And I liked it. I really, really liked it. Then I was handpicked to actually stand duty in the captain's office, in the XO's office. And I love the XO because she was a female, and her name was Tara as well. And so I just looked up to her so much to be the XO of Naval Station Norfolk. So I had high hopes, and I was proud to be handpicked to do that job. Then my LPO at that time was a female, and she was pregnant, so she left on maternity leave. I don't remember why she wasn't coming back to that duty station, but she wasn't. She went on maternity leave, and we had a new LPO assigned, and he was straight from a battleship.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, during that time, females were not on battleships.
Right.
I think we were only on aircraft carriers, and that was a fairly new thing too.
Yeah, it was new.
So he came from battleship, and here he was in an office with women, and obviously there were men in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, I was chosen to be somebody he went after.
Oh no.
So it was a lot of me being cornered in the office with talk and stuff that was just disgusting that I wanted no part of. Being asked out repeatedly, being asked to meet his son. He was recently divorced.
Wait. I'm sorry. Wait, what?
Yeah.
The XO?
No, my LPO.
Oh, your LPO. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I was like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I'm gonna have a heart attack. But still, that's insane.
Yeah. It was just, and I didn't make the wisest decisions at that time. As far as I did go out, I did drink.
We all did, girl. Wait a minute. No. Don't do that.
Oh no.
We went out in the Navy. We partied, we kicked it, we drank, we had a great time on our off time. Like, stories are true.
Yeah.
So don't start blaming yourself like you did something wrong.
Well,
we all partied.
Yes, I get that now, but he used that as a tool to get to me.
Of course he did.
But he would have found any way to get to me because that's just how he was. He would, I don't remember everything. I remember a shipmate of mine telling me that he found out that I had been out drinking one night, and he wished he had known that because he would have joined, because he was horny and knew that he would have gotten with me that night. He knows it.
He just knew that he would have hooked up with you if he.
Oh yeah.
With you guys.
Yeah.
I'm starting to feel like hostile work environment vibes from this situation.
It was totally like, it got so bad that I would hide my work in my desk drawers, and I would stay out of that office, and I would come in on the weekends to do my job. I did what I desperately had to do while he was in there. He sat behind me. I mean, it was cubicles. He was right behind me. So, yeah, I would hide my work and come in on the weekends and do my work. I did get, and I can't remember, and I have racked my brain. Somebody found all of my work in my drawers, and I did get in trouble, a verbal talking to about it. And I want to say maybe it was my chief warrant officer, but and I hadn't come forward yet. Then he started coming to my apartment. I lived off base.
Oh, no. So we're going from sexual harassment to stalking.
Yes. Some of the times I was not home. I only remember one time that I was, and I refused to open the door, and he was very angry. He was angry. I don't know if it was probably angry because I would not open the door and let him in. I can't even tell you how scared I was. I was so scared, and he was screaming at me, and he was mad because about my drinking. He wanted to talk to me about my drinking and how horrible that was, and how I was going to start getting written up and in trouble for damaging government property, and just, it was terrifying, the most terrifying thing I have ever endured in my life.
Okay, let me get this straight. So you're at your home, your apartment off base.
Yes.
And he shows up there. And one of these times that he's showing up there, you happen to be home, and he starts screaming at you through the door that you are damaging government property by drinking and threatening your job.
Yeah.
But at home, off work hours, not like in the office at work, where it would be appropriate if there was a real problem, if your drinking was such a problem.
But
he's at your door at your apartment after hours. That's creepy and very, very strange.
Yes, very. Then, let's see. At one point, he put me up for Sailor of the Month, which just disgusted me.
I bet.
I went through with it. I remember going in front of the board for it. But I just see that as he was grooming me, kind of a quid pro quo thing, that if I got it, I was going to owe him. It was going to happen. It was it was going to happen.
But that's not like something you can say no to. It's not as though they say, hey, you're up for Sailor of the Quarter, and you can just go, yeah, no thanks. I'm going to pass on that. Like, that's a trap. In your situation, that's a total trap.
Yeah. Yeah. There was absolutely nothing I can do. And the only question I remember in front of the board is, what were my thoughts on sexual harassment in the Navy?
Wow.
I wanted to crawl up and die at that moment, because my career was I felt like my career was on the line, and I had worked so hard to get where I was. And he was undoing everything for me. Everything. And I didn't feel like I could fight at that moment. So in front of the board, I lied, and I said, I don't think it's a problem.
Wow.
Knowing everything that had happened to me. But I was scared to lose my career at that point.
And how old were you when this all was happening?
I was 18.
18 years old.
Yeah.
So still just your first year in.
Yes.
And this was how many months after A school?
Maybe 3.
Oh my God.
I was so new to the whole freaking thing. To military life, I was so new. All I knew was boot camp. I didn't know how any of this worked. You know,
your first apartment off the base was probably your first apartment on your own, yeah?
It was, yes. And I really had no business doing that. I don't know why I thought I was all Miss High and Mighty, that I could afford all of that, but I did. You know, hindsight's 20/20. I should have stayed on base, kind of thing.
Well, it could have happened on base too. I mean, it just come to your barracks.
Oh yeah. So I was not good mentally by this point. I honestly wasn't. I was not sleeping. I was having nightmares. I know I was coming into work disheveled, and I don't particularly remember this. I was rereading some of my paperwork when I was filing my claim, and apparently I just lost it in the office in front of Master Chief one day.
Wow.
With my LPO right there beside me, and I guess it all came out at that moment.
So is that how it was reported? Is because you just couldn't take anymore and you had a breakdown in the workspace?
Yeah. Because at that point, Kia, I was waking up every morning wondering, was this going to be the day that he raped me? Was this going to be it? He has made threats. Was this going to happen? Was this just going to be the day that I lost it? You know? So, Master Chief sent me to psych that afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
I was questioned and I was sent back. I told them everything. It was like an interview. It wasn't, it was
like
really strange. It was just like going to the hospital and talking to the psychiatrist there. It wasn't like an appointment like what I experience now through the VA. It wasn't anything. It was not therapeutic. It was like I went in for a checkup is what it was like, you know. And when I go back and read the notes, they have everything listed. They have everything listed, how he talked to me, how he threatened me, how he came to my apartment. All of that, they recorded all of this. They recorded that I was having nightmares. They recorded that I was living on antacids because my stomach hurt so bad. You know, everything. You know what they diagnosed me with? Personality disorder.
Oh my God. I swear I was going to say a personality disorder.
Yes. And I was, yeah. So I was set up to be discharged very quickly from that point.
Oh my God. Okay, let me just, everybody who's listening, do you guys remember season 1 and Nicole, not the first Nicole, the model, the second Nicole, who was discharged from the Air Force with a personality disorder after she started making waves about the things that she had a moral conflict with and that she was seeing, right? And she talks about how the military often uses a personality disorder to rapidly remove someone that they consider a problem out of the service. I just want to tell you, this is not the first time that we've heard this. And you'll remember that story, and now you'll hear it again coming from Tara, because I suspect that that's exactly what we're about to hear, that she was rapidly discharged from the military with a personality disorder. And you know, from my research from joshuakors.com, this is something, a tactic that's been used on many, Tara, you are not alone.
Oh, girl, I know.
To be pushed out of the military that they consider a problem. You can't see those air quotes, but they're there. So I'm sorry, I just had to say that.
No, you're right. It's something, because you know what? For 25 years, Kia, 25 years, I thought it was just me. I thought it was just me. It wasn't until this past December, January that I started kind of digging. And it just, I guess it was the time to start working on everything that had happened, because I honestly hadn't. But back to that, this is one thing I am incredibly proud of. When I came forward and word got out, 3 other women came forward.
Oh my goodness. That's wonderful. Because sometimes people will keep their mouths shut, and sometimes women can become part of the problem, and we'll discuss that in future episodes. But sometimes they'll turn a blind eye, right, because of the culture. So it's amazing to me that 3 more women came forward because of you.
Yes. That's the only, I mean, I am incredibly thankful and proud of that moment. Whatever pushed me to finally have that breakdown and tell, hopefully that saved more. I know it did, because eventually, through the bullshit that we went through, he was eventually discharged. With mine, we had a captain's mast with him. He was verbally told to leave me alone, to not speak with me ever again. And that was just about it. He was going to be knocked down to, he was first class. He was knocked down to second class. That's what he got from mine. Now, when the other women came forward, we actually had an administrative hearing at that point.
Wow.
At that point, I was put on legal hold. I wasn't discharged yet. I was held for
they were discharging you. They were already in the process of discharging.
They were in the process of discharging me, yes.
My goodness.
Yeah, I had already done, I had a couple more psych meetings, and I say meetings because I never had therapy. I never had therapy. I didn't even know it was an option, so I didn't request it. I had no idea. It wasn't long, though, that I was moved from the captain's office, and I was put in the tour office of Naval Station. So I was taken from standing duty in the captain's office to giving tours to civilians of the base.
So,
and he got to stay.
A demotion. So they removed you like you were the problem in the situation when it was him.
Yes.
Like a demotion. You were so proud to be in that office.
Yes. I was incredibly proud. Yeah.
Do you think that if they hadn't have diagnosed you with a personality disorder and started a rapid procedure to remove you from service, that you would have retired or had a long career?
Most definitely. I think if they would have recognized the signs of PTSD, and maybe they did and just didn't want to deal with it so they could sweep it under the rug. Yeah. Because it was classic signs and symptoms of PTSD. I think if I would have received the therapy that I needed and he was removed and I was meant to feel safe at that point, not fearing being raped every day, yes, I so wanted a career in the Navy. I wanted it so badly. Yeah, I would have stayed in. Wow. But at this point, I was so upset and so scared. I wanted to go home. So when they let me put it this way. Now that I look at all my paperwork, and yes, I signed it all. I have no idea what I signed. I have absolutely no idea any of that paperwork.
They tell you got to do this, you got to do that, and you do it because you've just been trained to do what you're told.
Yeah, and not question anything as you're going along. But this is how it was put to me when they told me I was being discharged. They made it sound like it was my decision. They were like, "Do you want to go home?" And of course, yes, I want to go home because I was scared to death. Yes, I want to go home. And they're like, well, the Navy's downsizing. And the only thing I could think of that I really needed to check on is, am I getting an honorable discharge? And I did get an honorable discharge.
That's good.
So I'm thankful for that. At least I didn't have to fight for that. The personality disorder, I am going to have to fight to get off of my, or have it changed on the DD 215, have a DD 215 to get that off, because it's incorrect.
Yeah, I agree with you.
If you have, we know this, everything we go through to get into the military, we were found fit to serve. Right. And my parents never took me to therapy, as a kid growing up, none of that. I had no issues. So it was most definitely retaliation because I came forward with sexual harassment charges.
Wow. I wish I could say that was unbelievable, but more and more it seems to be somewhat common. And, but still really upsetting because so many people just never experience any of this. So it's easy to think that maybe it doesn't happen. But I talk to so many women and it is so common, and this is, I got to say, having served myself, I was aware of military sexual traumas, but stalkers surprised me. Like, I imagine in retrospect, yes, it's probably common and very likely, but every time I hear a story of a stalker or a stalking happening in the military, it still takes me aback because it's so brazen and it's such a small community, really, a base is. It's just unbelievable, that these men who are usually older take advantage of these 18, 19, 20-year-old girls that come in, and they put them in these positions where they feel threatened and scared and anxious like you did until you had a complete meltdown, and then you're the one who's penalized by being removed from a job that you absolutely loved, and then this guy continues on there almost like he gets a slap on the wrist, and probably would have gotten a slap on the wrist if it wasn't for those other women who chose to come forward and speak their truth.
Oh, I completely agree. He would have remained as the LPO for that office. And because I was removed, the trouble was gone until those 3 other women came forward. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he would have definitely been there. Let me throw this out. 8 years, well, 8, 9 years, I guess, after I was out, somewhere around there. It was around 2001, 2002. He found me again and mailed me a letter.
You got to be kidding me.
No. I had gone home for lunch with a coworker that day. My daughter was an infant then.
Mm-hmm.
And I had gone home for lunch and I wanted to check the mail, and there was this letter, and I opened it up and his name was on it. I was physically sick.
I would have
physically sick.
I would have thrown up too.
And sorry. Crying for her to get a hold of my husband because all of that fear had come back. He found me.
You.
He found me.
So hard. Oh my God.
Yeah. And I went into straight panic mode. And this seems so ridiculous, but when you suffer from PTSD, and I didn't know then. I didn't know I had PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
Girl, I was freaking out so bad because our county assessor had the blueprints to everybody's houses online. And so I was freaking out because our master bedroom had a door to the backyard, and that's the side of the bed I slept on.
Oh my God.
And I had my husband switch sides with me because I was scared he was going to come and get me. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was freaked out. The reason he wrote me is because he was going to have me call back to active duty because he was appealing his discharge. Okay. My inactive duty time was already over. I knew I could not be called back. I knew I couldn't be.
Oh, he did that just for some sick, twisted pleasure of his own.
Yes.
Just because he was a sick person and stalked you again. And
yes.
Found your information and contacted you to just disturb your peace and affect your life in a negative and sick, twisted way for his own pleasure. And it's disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is, thank God, the last time I have heard from him, and I hope it continues to be the last time I have heard from him. It took me 25 years and lots of heartache in those 25 years to be diagnosed with PTSD. Mm-hmm. And looking back at these 25 years, and you had mentioned that I worked 11 years in child abuse and neglect, some of those were very rough years because you know what? I had issues. I was triggered so much.
God, I can imagine. By
working with children who were sexually abused, or, just the power differential in those situations. So I got in trouble at work quite a bit because I would have blow-ups. I would scream. I wouldn't get my work done. I didn't concentrate very well in getting my paperwork done. I had a difficult time, and I thought for 25 years I was insane. There was something wrong with me because I could not do this job right. There was something wrong with me because I would fly off the handle and throw things at my husband for little bitty, minute things, So, yeah, when I came home, I was a mess. I was a mess for my parents. God loved them. They had no idea what to do with me, other than I was suicidal. They took turns leaving work during the day to come home and check on me to make sure I had not committed suicide. They had to force me to shower because I wouldn't get out of bed. I couldn't sleep at night. I would sleep during the day. I had a very difficult time coming back to civilian life. I had no support. I had support from my family. I didn't have the mental help that I needed desperately. And at some point, I filed a claim for disability. This is how crazy, I don't even remember doing that.
Wow.
Don't even remember filing it. I remember my mom taking me to Fayetteville, Arkansas for the, what's it called? The meeting with the psychologist.
Is it like for your claims and pensions appointment?
Yeah, the CMP. Thank you. Yes, the CMP. I was denied in a very quick manner. Within a month, I received a letter being denied that it was indeed personality disorder, nothing that happened to me in the Navy.
Wow. So wait a minute, they just denied it. Okay, you have to forgive me because I'm still angry about everything that happened before. And I was just thinking about how you were saying you spent so many years like not understanding that you had PTSD and that you were suffering with this and struggling with it because you had been through this like really traumatic experience as such a young girl, like just barely out of childhood. You were practically a victim of child abuse yourself when you really think about it. And and then you had all this difficulty transitioning out, and all of this because of one person's selfish, twisted behavior. And it's so common that it just enrages me when I talk to all of you, to my sisters who have experienced military sexual trauma and severe harassment and stalking and all the various other things that happen to women who are serving, when it's unfortunate that a lot of us have such a great experience until the day that we don't,
Exactly.
And then the repercussions of that last our lifetimes. It's not just over once you're out or over once the person is removed from your experience. Right. Many of us, like Angie, who was my guest for my season 2 premiere, has struggled her whole rest of her life, and it infuriates me because it's just so not right. Because we start out, like you said, before our MEPS physical, everything we get checked off, right? We're a specimen to go serve our country. And then so many of us come out shattered and broken. And it takes us sometimes the rest of our adult lives to get our lives back together in order to thrive in this life.
Exactly.
So you have to forgive me because I just had to express how angry I was about what happened to you and the repercussions of it on your life.
It's disgusting. That's the only word I can think of, because it wasn't, and I have to say it was probably all of this with the Me Too movement. Mm-hmm. Granted, just because, and here's what it was, because I remember saying this to my husband: that's fine and dandy for everybody in Hollywood. What about us from the military? We have no way for anything to happen for us.
Hashtag Me Too military.
Yes. I looked at him. I remember saying, we are screwed. They completely get away with everything they did to us. And it was at that moment that I realized that I was, I think, more pissed at the United States Navy for victimizing me almost even more than my perpetrator did. Mm-hmm. They robbed me of something and threw me out on the curb like a piece of trash without any help, and could have cared less. When I went back, when I was working on my claim for PTSD and I was looking through my discharge paperwork, they honestly wrote, expedite Seaman Apprentice McCune's discharge. She continues to be high risk of harm to herself and others. And they discharged me without absolutely any mental health help at all. Nothing. They just threw me out there. If I didn't have my parents, I would have been that statistic of one of the homeless female veterans out there. I would have been, because I was too far gone mentally. And it was my parents pulling me out of it and forcing me to apply to college and forcing me to go, even though I didn't want to. If I didn't have that support, I would have been one of my sisters, homeless and out there. And that's what the Navy did.
It's so upsetting, and it's so common. That's the thing, that I talk to women who ended up homeless because of a military sexual trauma or harassment or this expedited discharge when they had nowhere to go. I mean, on episode 1, my best friend of life, Melanie, because of an illness, was rapidly discharged, shattering her dream of a lifelong career and leaving her nowhere to go because she was from an abuse childhood household. So she did not want to go back. The Navy was literally her lifeline, her escape. And then she was suddenly had nowhere to go.
And thrown back into the bad.
Right, and she would have been homeless.
I am so thankful to God. I'm serious. So thankful to God for my parents. They beat themselves up because they didn't get me mental health assistance. I don't beat them up for that. I don't fault them. I honestly don't. This was 1994. Post-traumatic stress disorder was not talked about. And to be honest, my dad was suffering from PTSD from Vietnam, and that was undiagnosed as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say he probably didn't even know.
Yeah. I mean, they knew there were problems. They just didn't know what to do. But now looking back, just them being there was what helped me survive. They forced me to, I mean, seriously, my dad forced me to apply to college, and I did not want to go, but I did. And, that's actually where I met my husband 4 years later. So it was meant to be. It was not an easy road. I had lots of bumps. I built really big, thick walls to protect myself. Right. I was considered and called a bitch numerous times. I was pretty cold. But it wasn't because I was a bitch. It was because I was protecting myself. Nobody knew. I didn't share. I didn't talk about what happened. I was so embarrassed. I was so ashamed. For probably now I'm pretty good with it is not my shame, and that is my mantra. It is not my shame. I didn't do anything wrong.
I love that mantra. We should all have that mantra.
Yes. It took me quite a while in therapy to get to that point, because I didn't consider myself a veteran. Some people knew that, I served, but I was so. But what is the first question people ask you when they find out you served? How long did you serve? How do I answer that? I'm still kind of stuck at this point. But I'm much braver now in saying, you know what? I didn't get to serve near as long as I wanted to. I'm a survivor and a warrior of military sexual trauma. But if given the chance, I would have probably been there in a career. And that pretty much shuts people down at that point.
I bet it does.
Yeah. Because I will never say I'm a victim of military sexual trauma. We are survivors and we are warriors. We have fought hard to still be here on this earth.
And not only that, because you were talking about your experience at the VA earlier, right? And how you had to go through all your paperwork and fight because they denied you the first time, right? And you had to fight for it, improve, right? So then what happens is once we finally start to get on our feet again, we start fighting the VA, right? And then we have to go through that whole process of going through I know I did it, denied multiple times and fought. Actually been fighting for 11 years.
Oh my God.
11 years. I've gone before the board. I've, talked to Congress people, senators, just fighting my case, just trying to be heard because my illnesses are invisible. And like you said, I went in healthy, so where did they come from?
Right.
And so over time, because things like PTSD and fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue are illnesses that are not spoken about early in the 90s, they're more commonly spoken about now. It's been such a struggle for them to acknowledge it. So again, fighting and fighting.
You're exactly right, because, and there is, and I will be happy to share any of this with any of our sisters out there. There is a fantastic group on Facebook that help with.
You hear me? There you are.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Can you start that part over again?
Sure. There's a fantastic group on Facebook, and I will share this with any of our sisters that need to. That it's an MST claim support group, and we have our sisters who are VSOs who are very well versed in doing these claims that walk us through this claims process. Life savers to get you through. But you know what I hear and see over and over and over in this group? We are totally re-victimized in this process because of having to go to the CMPs, where, most of us are in therapy, and probably most of us through the VA. So we have an established relationship with a therapist where we have trust, where we feel safe, where we have been diagnosed with PTSD, but because of the VA claims process, we have to be sent to a stranger to be poked and prodded on and have to relive this trauma with somebody we don't know to prove that we have PTSD.
To prove
when we've already been diagnosed with it.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, that is another battle, and I won mine. And it's not even about the money. It wasn't about the money for me. It's the vindication. I've waited 25 years to hear them say, yes, this is service connected.
I agree
this
with that.
Happened.
I feel that.
I wanted that so badly, and I have that. So it's been a process, and I see all of my sisters out there doing such beautiful, wonderful things for fellow veterans and everything. And I'm going to get there one of these days. I really want to. It's been, I just started working on all of this and processing all of this myself, because I just put it on the back burner for so long. And it's, just all of this has just overwhelmed me, I think. When I started researching how so many of us are discharged with personality disorder that have MST, I didn't realize that, and that angered me so much because I didn't realize that was happening. I thought it was just me. For 25 years, I thought it was just my case, but it's not. And that just, I can't think of another word, but disgusting what they do to us, And to think that we stood there and raised our right hand and took that same oath that the men did. And there are men victims. I understand that there are male victims.
There are.
But for us to take that oath and to be treated the way we have been treated is just disgusting. It's disgusting.
I don't think that most people who haven't served would, there are people who would understand, but most people wouldn't understand what it's like to raise your hand up and give up your civil rights, your human rights even, and become property of the United States government. It's a big deal. It's a big thing. And we did it. And a lot of us experienced some really unsavory things, to put it mildly, while we served. And the after effects of that last a lifetime.
They do. Even though, I'm still, that I've gotten help and in therapy and all of that, it's still it's going to be with me the rest of my life. My extra alert, how I'm extra alert when I'm out and about, and just other little weird things that I have developed, over the years to help protect myself. Those will forever be with me. I will always have triggers, just like other sisters will always, and brothers. Everybody will have all of that. It's nothing that will go away completely ever,
Mm-hmm.
But one thing in therapy that I did learn is I am a veteran, because I struggled with that so much, because I was in like exactly 1 year and 4 days.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I served out of my 4-year enlistment. I was so ashamed of that I was not. That's why I never talked about it. I was embarrassed because I didn't serve my enlistment. And it wasn't until one of my therapy sessions, she gave me a challenge coin.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of the challenge coins?
Yes.
I had never heard of them. So, she gave me that, and she explained to me what it is. And she said, "You are a veteran, and let me be the first to thank you for your service."
Oh my gosh.
And I absolutely lost it,
I'm
because
ready to
she
use it right now.
was the first person who ever said that to me. And I, for 25 years, never felt like a veteran, ever.
Oh my God.
So that was a huge turning point for me,
I can just
a huge turning point. And for the better, because I am now proud to say I am a United States Navy veteran. And
right.
to commemorate that moment of being proud, even though I'm angry for what the Navy did to me, I love tattoos. I'm a tattoo girl. I got Rosie the Riveter tattooed on my forearm. I gave her red hair because I have red hair. And she has a tattoo of the United States Navy with an anchor on her arm that she's flexing. And that is my reminder that I am a veteran, and I am a warrior, and I am strong. That is my forever reminder of that.
You are, girl. You are. And I want to thank you for your service and for coming on here and sharing your story. This is huge. And, earlier you said that you would get there. You would get to a point where you could give back to the veteran community. And this is it. This is the first step, you coming on here and talking about what happened to you and speaking your truth and using your voice to share what happened to you for other female veterans who may not be at that place where they can yet, so that they can feel a little bit less alone. And it's a beautiful thing.
That is the one reason, because it is a very lonely place to be. It's a very lonely place to be, because, how we talked about Hollywood Me Too and all of that. The military Me Too is a completely different, scary, dark place to be, because there's not near as much help as there is in the civilian world for it. So if that was my whole reasoning in wanting to do this, if I could get one sister to understand that it's not their fault and they are not alone, and that we are here for them to help them walk this journey, then this was all worth it. It was all worth it. And especially because I also have to watch how I don't feel like my trauma was as bad as some other traumas, because others were raped and, things like that. And I have to remember trauma is trauma.
That's right.
You cannot compare traumas. So if one sister hears that and goes, "Oh my God," if I can make her feel like her trauma is valid, then my job is done. My job is done.
Absolutely. And I identify with that 1,000%.
Yeah.
So this is the mission of the podcast, is so that we all of us sisters have a community where we don't feel alone, where we can talk about, hey, I had a great experience. I was unaffected. Cool. That's awesome. That doesn't mean that your situation is much different than mine. If I had a bad experience, we're all veteran sisters. You're a woman. I'm a woman. You can understand what I went through. I can be happy that you didn't have to go through what I went through, you know?
Absolutely.
Be a part of this beautiful sisterhood and just lift each other up and validate each other through this whole process. That's the mission, that we are all this family because we've had this unique experience that not many people have. And certainly as women, our experience is unique to us by gender, not because we are less than men, just because we are different than men and because it's historically a boys' club. And we've had to assimilate into it.
Exactly. And work harder to prove ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Since the dawn of time. So,
yes.
Of women serving, you know. So we're raising our voices, we're standing up, and we're joining forces, and we're putting, you know, our voices out into the world to say, we did this. Sometimes we didn't have a good experience, and we got treated bogusly by the United States government, and we're not going to be silent about it. And guess what else? If you had a wonderful experience, I'm glad to know that they happened. You know?
Me too. I absolutely love hearing that fellow sisters had a great time, you know, had a very good career, or their enlistment was wonderful. I am thrilled for them to have that experience because, you know, I don't think any of us would wish our bad experiences on anybody.
That's right.
You know?
Right. And every story is important, like I always say. Said it a million times, and to say it again. Every story is important, and that's why we hear them all on the Female Veterans Podcast, because we are a sisterhood. And again, I want to say thank you so much for sharing your story and just speaking your truth and sharing your insights. And they are the help that you received in therapy that is so beneficial for all of us to hear. It's just, it's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Kia, so very much for allowing us to put our stories out there. You made a comment to me before when we have talked that you aren't Oprah, but you are you're my Oprah. You're putting our stories out there. You're giving our voice somewhere to go. And we need that. So it takes somebody strong like you to do that for us. And you don't know how much that means.
Oh my God, thank you so much.
So thank you.
Means the world to me. I am so grateful for all of those beautiful, kind words. I mean, can we get choked up?
No.
But before I completely lose it and start crying, I'm going to ask you one last question, okay?
Okay.
So you have told us so many good little gems hidden in your story there.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you have for a fellow sister who might view your story as a survival guide?
It's going to be simple, and I've already talked about it. It's not your shame. It's not your shame. Assign that shame where it belongs, because it certainly isn't yours. And it's time to start healing and allow yourself to do that. And that they are loved. They are loved. And we will walk with them through it. So that's my advice.
Oh my God, and such good advice too. I have goosebumps. What a story. This has been such an incredible interview. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful advice. It's not your shame. Just beautiful advice. And if this story touches just one person, then we've done our job here, Tara. So
that's all I hope for. I mean, I'm serious. I want that one woman sitting out there that just happened to stumble upon this, that is sitting there in that dark place and hear one of these stories on your podcast That's all I ask for, that they have that one little gleam of hope, because that dark place is so scary, and I have been there so many times. And when I found the sisterhood again, and when I allowed myself back into the military world,
Mm-hmm.
it has been an incredible help for me. And so that one woman sitting there in that dark, this is for her.
Absolutely.
It's for her.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tara.
Kia, thank you.
And you know what? With that, I'm going to wrap this up. So I just want to say thank you, everyone, for listening. I appreciate you so very much for coming on this journey with me. Thank you for being a part of this sisterhood. And I love you guys. And I'll talk to you next